first step is to split the corridor. In order to do this, I turn on the station points to make them visible in the alignment, highlight the alignment, right mouse, click, edit assignment labels. You want to add both the major and then the minor. Change the increment so that you can see them, since our path is really quite small or short. Alright, so since you've been planning ahead of where we're going to insert a landing into the project, notice I've identified the high point in our site between the 50 and the 60 corridor. So I'm going to be very generous in terms of picking 10 feet in order to make this transition to the trail, the smaller trail. So I deleted a few extra objects, and now I'm going to highlight the corridor. Okay, notice that was I didn't get the corridor there. I got the feature line. So hit the corridor. There's an option there that says split region. This requires 2 mouse clicks. 1, click the corridor you want to split, and 2, where do you want to split it? So we need to do this twice. Once for the northern portion and once for the southern portion. There we go. We now have 3 regions. We can view this in the corridor properties. You can see the precise locations and double check to make sure. There you are. You have 3 sections, the northern, the southern, and then this middle one, which we're going to use for the landing. So for display purposes, I'm going to show you here that now that section has been, hidden, turned off. So what we can do is, for that middle section, we can attach a separate assembly, and what we need is something related to the first one, just minus the slope from the center line of the road to the east. So I'm going to make 2 versions just in case, and as you see, delete the side slope connectors, and then change their names so I can tell the difference. Let's just say this is a precursor to achieving a true intersection between 2 corridors. So this is a preliminary, so I'm going to call this crown right, and the other one I'll call crown left. Remember, this relies very much on the direction that you specified for your alignment. So when you know which direction your alignment goes, you'll know which one of these assemblies you need to use for your corridor. Okay, so we're going to zoom in here and fill that middle section. Alright, hit the feature line again. All right, corridor properties. Now for that center section, I'm going to change the assembly to the right. Okay, apply, rebuild the corridor. Notice I forgot to turn it back on, so can't see it. This takes me a little while to figure out. There we go, checkbox. And now we'll be able to see the new proposal. It's giving me some information because there's no targets on the eastern portion. Alright, so here's the corridor rendered so that you can see that gap on the eastern side. So corridor is trail. I have a draft version of the trail. You can see it highlighted there in red. I now need to create an alignment from the object. You've done this before. Select the alignment, confirm the direction. Now give it a name that's recognizable. I'm going to call it F Trail. Associate it with the site F. It's proposed, it's existing. We can turn on the labels. And I really don't need a 200-foot radius for this tiny trail. Turned it to 50, and there we go, there's a proposal. Goodness knows where that funky grading came from, so we'll just keep going ahead and we'll watch it disappear. Alright, so now I've got an alignment. Now I need a profile. So this is the existing profile. It's for the trail. Check my site. Existing. Add it. And then draw in profile view. So I'm going to skip ahead here. You know I like to have a little bit of breathing room around my profile, so I'll change this to 0 to 16. It's really just visual preference. Keeps the clutter away. There's the profile. Alright, good. So it's it's following the 10-foot contour right in between the 9 and the 10. So it's going to appear relatively flat. We're going to have to cut into the hillside though. Now what I'm doing here is checking the elevation. Okay, well unfortunately for there it's 0, but we do know that it's 9.35. I'm getting rid of that grading object because it is false. So we do know, can use the elevation editor, check the feature line, identify that point. I know it's 9.35. And so I want to check the point here. And if I wait patiently, it'll tell me it's 9.01. So my design profile is next, and I know I need to travel from 9.35 to 9.01. Profile creation tools. Alright, so it's proposed. F Trail North. Okay, good. To design profile. There we go. Alright, excellent. So I'm going to draw the tangent. And I'm going to snap to the start. I don't need any fancy alignments. Snap to the end. Change that to 9 point. I could leave it at 3.4. But we know that this one, the second one, the end, so 9.35, there we go, because we know that's what it is. And here we are, this should be 9.01. So we're going to be sloping gently downward. Great, so now that we have the design profile, we need an assembly, and then we'll have our corridor, and we could then work with the resolution of how the corridor, this little trail corridor, meets the original path corridor. So F Trail North again. Now I want this to sheet drain, so no crown, so it's going to be planar. And I'm going to use the basic lane again. Snap to the opposite side. There you go. And now we'll use the subassembly properties to edit so it meets our criteria. So it's really only a 3-foot path. It probably doesn't need to be that deep either, but for our purposes it's fine. We'll repeat this for the other. So we're going to change that to +2. Alright, so then it drains. Now notice, right, on the left-hand side it's higher. So we're going to add the connection to the side slope. Right, so what is that? Link to surface. And I want it to occur in both a cut and a fill condition. So I'm going to make sure that there's 2 of them there. And our slope here is going to be, right, 33% or 3 to 1. Negative 3 to 1 here. Right. Apply the same thing to the other side. Alright, there we go. So the next step for us is going to be creating the corridor. So here's our subassembly for the trail. There's our alignment and our subassembly, so we can change a layer to layer 0. Alright, good. So now we're going to create a corridor with the trail, which profile, the trail profile, and the subassembly that we just made. Target surface is the existing ground. Apply. Let's take a look. Looks fair. Okay. You can zoom in, you can see how it meets directly there. And so there's a little bit of void in terms of the ground on either to the north and the south of our proposed corridor. But one of the things that we can do is, probably for our accuracy, we don't need it. So in this step here, you can see I'm making a surface for that for the new trail, so that we can display the corridors for that. Rebuild the corridor. Okay. Alright, so to the precision of the grading that we need for this assignment, it's really not so important that we make that little transition between the 2 grading objects. And it's even more visible here when we display it at 1 to 10. So there's that 10 contour. Just comes through the path just a little bit. Good. File save. Alright, so if we look at it in 3D, there we are. Okay, so this is an option. This is the time now where you can shade it, see if it looks appropriate. Use the ID command to ID the points to make sure that the elevation of the top surface of your proposed trail actually meets the top elevation of the corridor that you have, the original corridor. If for any reason they do not match, you go back to your profile, the design profile, and change the elevation of the end portion of your corridor. Alright, so let's take a look at it in plan. There we go. Alright, back to wireframe. So in this next portion, I'm going to use a grading infill object to make a transition or an intersection light between my North Trail corridor and my existing path corridor. So I've drawn some lines. I've offset about 3 feet, or offset the distance for the grading in order for the surface of the path to meet the existing grade, and I'm going to scoot my alignment so that it starts at that point, and then plan to make an infill object in that gap. So I'm IDing some points here so that I know what my target should be. I'm also IDing points so that I can make sure that my feature line that I'm going to use to create the infill object will meet the criteria or meet perfectly the existing surface. So remember, if you hold your mouse there and you let it hang out for a little while, you can confirm the elevation on all of the surfaces that exist in that one location. So I'm just doing this to confirm. Alright, so you notice it can't snap even to the apparent intersection between my drafted line and the corridor. So I'm going to continue to keep trying to do that. Alright, so I'm just going to hover and wait for a result. Takes patience. Alright, so I confirm the distance. So that's 2 feet. And I want it to slope at 2%, so I know there's going to be a change in elevation there of 0.04. So do a little math. 9.11. 01 plus 04 will give us 9.05. So I know that the end point, if I go to my geometry editor and then use the point, there we go. I'm going to change that to the correct value, 9.05, good. Then I'll create my corridor. So please remember this, creating the infill object, this is an alternative to making the more complex intersection. So that comes later. Alright, so made the corridor from the new trail. Let's hit apply, rebuild. Alright. Check and see if that looks like we had anticipated. It does. Still have that funky grading up to the north, but I think we'll figure that out pretty quickly. As you notice, I forgot to hit OK, so I have to do it again. Good. So all that's left now is to make that little infill grading. Save the file if you've done something that you're pleased with. So I'm going to create a feature line, and I'll snap to the edge of the path, not to the edge of the grading there. Okay, good. Accept the elevation, because you know what it is. Here, we'll accept the slope, because we know that it's snapping to the edge of that grading object for the corridor, or that little apron. So I'm going to snap a few times here so that I can attempt to get as close a match between all of the surfaces that I'm designing here. The top is surface for the corridor and the top is surface for the trail corridor. Alright, edge of the path, remember? Alright, since there's a center line, I hope I'm going to, nope, didn't do it, but should be alright. Because it's not a crown, so we're fine. So I now have a feature line. Now I'm going to check this to make sure that I didn't snap to anything that was on the 0, or didn't snap to a point or a link point that was, Alright, so look, there's a little difference there, so I need to make a few changes. So I'm going to check that point, and now I'm going to move the midpoint to snap there. There we go. So now there's no void between the feature line and the top surface of the original path corridor. Alright. I think there's another point I have to fix. Zoom in here. You can see, select that, grab that point, stretch it up, make sure it hits the link to the edge of the pavement, not the grading. Now you could have made a feature line that snapped to both those points. I want to make a grading group, well, actually an infill. Place my mouse there. Notice the green grading symbol shows up. That means we've created a surface. Let's double check. That looks quite right to me. Alright, and it meets our criteria. Good. So I'm just going to rebuild some things that are telling, just in case. Now the other thing is you have to pay attention to all of your grading groups so that before we proceed to the next step. Zoom out here, so let's take a look, make sure that we've got some surfaces to work with. And so now the last step, we're going to combine all the proposed surfaces. So it means we have to do a little bit of work. One is inventory all of your surfaces and make sure that they belong to the proper grading group. So you can highlight it and then see change group if you want to put them together in a new grading group, which I do. And then I need to add that our little landing transition. Needs to be part of today's grading group. And then I have the platform or terrace to the south. And I need to make a grading object for the terrace. And then the shoulder. And we'll add them all together. So create grading, make sure, right, grading creation tools, make sure it's today's grading group. And you have to select the surface which it is in relationship to, which is our existing ground. And then you're going to create your infill. So there it is for the terrace. And here for the shoulder. And as soon as you make them, they're all being associated with that grading group. You notice now that we can see the contours, because it'll create automatic surface creation is turned on for the grading group. And if we tumble it a little bit, we can see our solution. Good. So now what we need to do is make a surface, which is going to be our final surface, which will have all the proposed entities in it, or all the new surfaces that we proposed. Remember, do your inventory and add them in order. Alright, so I had an extra grading group. So proposed surface is the one we care about, right there. And we're going to add all those things together. So unfurl, go to edits, right mouse click, paste surface, and we're going to start with just the proposed. So there's the path. Here goes the trail. And then we'll add the grading group for all of those grading objects. Good. So that's the proposed surface. So the task is now to now work specifically with display. Make sure your existing contours are shown as background style, and that the proposed contours are the 1 in 5 design contours, and you're going to hide the extraneous information and just make sure that you provide the edges of the path corridor and the edges of the trail corridor, and then using the feature lines to show the crisp edges of both the terraces and the shoulder. So this is just a lot of change the display. Make sure that you've updated your plot table, so that when you output this, you will follow the same instructions as you did for assignment 6 in terms of the information that is to be displayed in your plot. But this is proof of concept, so you can see the difference, and you can also see that the proposed contours do meet up with your existing contours. Alright, so now the edges are on. Remember, there's a tutorial for how to create a feature line, and thank you.